Welcome to part 2. Last we left off, I touched upon the first 4 games of the X series. Now, it's about time we finish off with the final 4. The second half of the X series has seen better days for sure. Granted, some of them still pulled off something remarkable, but the sheer drop in overall quality is very abundant. The bad design choices stick out harder, the gimmicks miss more than they hit, and it's clear that it's overstaying its welcome when it's better off quitting while it's a hit. You alright there?
I'm fine, just trying to wash down all the grief.
Okay, look, I know I was a bit harsh there. Nevertheless, while these games are here, I'll still give them the benefit to judge them for what they are.
Yeah, that seems fair. Don't you got any real beer here?
Whose castle do you think this is? Anyways, let's open up the package with Mega Man X5. Mega Man X5 is the game that's made with the original intent to conclude the X series, as Inafune takes off to work on other projects ranging from masterpieces to less-pieces. Logically, it'll be following X4's advanced style, but in terms of catching up through gameplay, it's obviously not going to be that easy. And big surprise, it's true. After the Reploforce events last time, X and Zero continue their pursuit to end the Sigma infection. They're assisted by an expanded command base and find themselves encountering a new threat known as Dynamo, a maverick agent hired by Sigma to help scatter his virus from a space colony. Meanwhile, Zero has grown sick of all this Sigma bullcrap and decided to end it if it costs his life, while X tries to keep him under control. Thus, conflict between bros ensue. Let's get this out of the way first. For once, they're not trying to hide Sigma playing the role of the big bad. The story actually centers around him and ending the maniacal reign he asserted once and for all. It makes the story easier to take seriously and sets the tension of X and Zero's ethical conflict to a respectably high bar. Kudos to the developers for not forcing a twist for once. Gameplay-wise, I find that there's a lot of things this game does really well even compared to the previous games. One of which is that X and Zero overall feels much better controlled. Something about how they move feels more tight and smoother to the touch. Zero himself plays well on his own, but X gets a few nice tune-ups, particularly that his armor from the last game retains to this game, making it easy for him to catch up to Zero in gameplay ecstasy just as efficiently. But even more so is the introduction to the Falcon armor, one of the best armors in the entire series, with charge shots that fire faster than Sonic in a Chili Dog Vault, and the ability to
fly so very high and touch the sky.
So given that, the characters themselves are a lot of fun to pick up and mess around with. The soundtrack takes a noticeably different direction from what we get in X4, and frankly, it's a welcome one. There's a bigger variety of tracks in this game and a lot of them slap. Easy Glow, Skyver, and the Maverick Battle theme are some of my favorite tracks in the series. If only they went all out with the thematic diversity and not recycle some tracks from the previous titles, this game would have had one of, if not, the best track collection in the series. The Mavericks themselves are still great. Even if not all of them have great stages, they still provided pretty good battles to compensate. My favorites include Dark Dizzy, Squid Adler, Axel the Rat, and Duff McWhalen. Yeah, okay, the names are stupid, but at least the fights are cool. Also, Dynamo's a fine lad. He's not a big, overarching villain, but he works well as an administrator and had pretty good boss fights to follow up. So as you can see, the game stands out in a lot of ways, with some of its good qualities actually being amongst my favorites in the whole series. And yet, the whole game is still mediocre somehow? Why? Well, I'll tell you why. Because everything else in the game is practically the opposite case. As fun as it is to play as X and Zero, it's not exactly complemented by good level designs. The stages in the game, yeah, a lot of them try to do the same thing X4 did and fails miserably at it. And the new gimmicks it added are hit and miss at best. The stages are occasionally handled respectably like Skyver's and Axel's, but much of the game is a collage of ideas that just don't mesh well together. Squid Adler's stage starts you out with a terribly timed chaser bike segment, and puzzles that are phenomenally tedious to go through. Matrax has hazards that either deal too much damage or kill you instantly, and Duff's stage is underwater. Cramped, auto-scrolling, underwater. Yuck. And that's not even touching the ridiculous fortress stages. Even when there are good stages here and there, it still doesn't feel very fulfilling to play through them. Why? This. Alia will never shut the hell up! Every single stage, she just has to tell you the basic instructions you can learn from just playing the intro stage of X1. Any fast-paced fun you could have had will always be interrupted by this failed experiment nagging about what a stage hazard is. It blows. It takes you off the investment quite a hefty lot. It's this kind of attitude towards players that puts tutorials at such a low bar, and I hate that current games still have yet to fully recover from that. It's such a small thing, but it really drags the whole game down. Other than that, I do not like the Gaia armor. I know it's supposed to be the bulky jawbreaker counterpart to Falcon, but goddamn does it suck. Looking like Beck is bad enough, the fact that it's so weighty and can't hit anything over 3 feet away from X makes it insanely situational and almost never convenient to take for a ride. Granted, it's not compulsory to the core game, but it's still a key feature that the developers don't intend to let you ignore. And that's the gist of it. To be honest, I don't want to be too mad with X5, considering what it intends to do. It's supposed to mark the end of such a large series, and at the very least, it got that across fine. The final battle against Sigma is probably the biggest it's been throughout the series, and the ending really hits home of the tragic send-off of our favorite dynamic duo. I may have made fun of the series for how it handles its story in the past, but this is a really good way to close it all down. Ending Sigma for good, letting Zero rest for another generation, and X carries on his legacy for as long as he lives. Mediocre or not, X5 did what it could to stand out with his own identity. It may not have been the best X game, but it still managed to be pretty damn epic. Out of all the X games, this one might just be the most in the middle when it comes to its overall quality. It's a shame because there is a lot of ambition presented here, but all it took was a few bad decisions to pull it down from being as spectacular as it deserves to be. But alas, for a conclusion to the X series, at least it's something worth playing. I mean, it's not like the executives got too cocky and decided to go against the permission of the producer just so they can keep milking the series until it's so dry, you could barely refer to what came out of it as a game anymore.
Hey, I was gonna finish that!
What's this? A continuation of a series that already said out loud we've had enough? Man, this is gonna end well for everyone, right? I hate this game. No, really, why should I even sugarcoat it? Mega Man X6 is the sequel that nobody had or should ask for. And even if it is, I think everyone will be alright if the game stayed developed for at least more than a year! I can't begin to fathom how so much of this game just drives me off course. Hell, I don't think I could express enough as to why. But for the sake of this video, I'll try to squeeze it down. A strange occurrence of data infestation occurred in the Reploid world, and X comes back to investigate the matter to his own hands. The infestation is revealed to be the Nightmare phenomenon, and an evil scientist named Gate plans to use its data to seize greater power. Along the way, we come across some of the dumbest plot twists in gaming history, and encounter obnoxious villains that make you want to pull the game out of your system and feed it to a type of piranhas. Now, I could just go ahead and rip this game to shreds right now, but let's get some salvageables out of the way first. The music is great. It's honestly some of the series' catchiest and most diverse collections yet. There's a variety of beats from soft techno, hard techno, to synths and even ethnic instruments composed for the various stages the game has. So the best I can say about this game is that it's at least fun to listen to. I also like most of the designs they have for the Mavericks, with a lot of them looking pretty dang slick and some of them even just so damn adorable. The armors are also okay for most of the time. Blade Armor has a neat little jet dash, and Shadow Armor has such a unique arsenal that it's a much more interesting alternative compared to Gaia. And I suppose it's worth mentioning that the main characters still play well, and nuisances like alias tutorials have been toned down significantly, which helps the pacing a lot. Now with that settled, it's time for the fun part! Why, oh why do they release the game in such a state? X6 is so frustrating, so unbalanced, so hastily designed and badly put together that I swear I got physically and mentally ill just from playing it. Want me to start somewhere? Well, how about the story? What story? It's aimless, even for X standards. The villains are dumb and pathetic. The translation makes Princess Maker 5 look affluent. And hey, felt emotional about Zero's death in the last game? Well, mind that not, because he just comes back after he repaired himself. Yeah. If that doesn't sell you on how dumb this package is, then the awful gameplay surely will. The level designs are bad. They're either laughably short or long enough to be jam-packed with terribly designed hazards. Not to mention, the existence of the Nightmare phenomenon comes in to make your experience just that much more rotten. Because you know, who doesn't love taking a stroll through an acid rain in the middle of the dark? Or you know, try to climb instant kill ice blocks while soul bodies pelt you at every angle. Even without these phenomenons, the levels hardly fare much better when one of them is literally designed to be a gauntlet where you fight 6 metal donuts over a Ribena pool. The only 2 stages I like in this game are Commander Yamark and Metal Shark Player stage. And that's because the former is the most standard and fair stage to deal with, and the latter prepares you to deal with misery ahead of time without pelting you with it at every angle. The other mechanics? Ha! I didn't bring up rescuing Reploids in X5 because I thought it was passable for what it is. But here, they really want to give you incentive to rescue them. So they put them in impossible to reach places and even make it so that they can die if you didn't save them fast enough. It won't be so bad if they didn't carry upgrades at random, but they did. And you see these secret portals? Yeah, apparently you have to go through at least 2 of them to reach the fortress levels, which results in you having to face up some of the most disgusting level designs ever to be put in Farm and fight the worst boss in the entire Mega Man pantheon twice! Gates Lab is an amalgamation of cancer where you have to go through elongated stage segments with very few checkpoints and platforming pitfalls so bad it's unpassable with the wrong armor equipped. And Hymax? Well, I hope you enjoy switching your weapons around up to 80 times, because that's pretty much the only way you can scratch the armor of this floating turd. But hey, looking past all that, at least Gate is a pretty good villain, right? He's trash. His boss fight requires you to blow up his own attacks, forcing you to take damage every time you try to hurt him. But you know what? I'll give him some credit for fighting to the end with his own luck.
I'm still alive, motherfucker!
I expected too much from you, did I? Yep, out of nowhere, Crimson Chin comes back to put a clumsy lid on this sad, pathetic mess. Honestly, while it's not his best outing, I'll give him some credit that his battle is actually kinda fun. It may just be due to how bad the rest of the game is, but I'll gladly take a punchline of a boss fight like this to end it all with compared to whatever the hell I got earlier. Look, I know, rush is something that just happens with game development. But this is Mega Man X, a series that has a reputation for being one of Capcom's biggest names. No matter the circumstance, its installments deserve to be handled with care and respect. Otherwise, you get regurgitations of despair like this. You're literally better off playing any other Mega Man game that comes before and after this. I suppose this game does make me appreciate the good qualities of the other X games better, but for everything else, Mega Man X6 can just blow. That was rancid. And to think that this game could have at least been passable if they just playtested more. Music and character design notwithstanding, nothing about this game felt like it's built out of passion. Just a desperate collage of gimmicks that's trying to refresh the series, but only wind up representing how little the production cares about putting out an actual good product by the time the series already screeched its halt.
You really stress yourself out, don't you? Don't worry, I know a game you could play to calm your nerves down.
No! I am not going to play you!
I was still show this.
Oh. Well, okay. So, Command Mission, the supposedly obscure RPG spin-off that has quite a bit of a cult following in some circles of the fanbase. As an RPG enthusiast myself, I figure I should give this game a look and see how it holds up. I will say that this isn't something that I can compare to other X games given how different it is, so I'll give brief thoughts on what works and what doesn't for now. In this game, X and his crew are assigned on a mission to fight a rebellion army led by a villain named Absalon. Along the way, he comes across new interesting faces such as a card-dealing bounty hunter, a fanboy with an axe,
Seiko D is a beautiful lolly!
and a thief whose inventor I swear has something they're not telling us. Familiar allies like Zero join in the fray as well, and we get introduced to Axel, debuting with his trademark copy shot and a perfectly serviceable voice.
Yeah, let's go with that.
I quite like the style of this game. Each character has really standout designs, including a much more colorful looking X. The game also has a somewhat lighthearted tone to it that kind of encapsulates how the third row of X games feel overall. And the soundtrack, knowing that this is where Virus Mission gets most of its tunes, makes me feel pretty damn nostalgic. For an RPG, it has its own battle system that relies on various button inputs to trigger specific battle commands. Everyone has their small attacks, basic attack, an overdrive, and a hyperform. Or rather, multiple hyperforms. The interface takes a little while getting used to since it's easy to mispress a button, but I do think there's a lot of potential for good, fast-paced playstyle somewhere within. But if we're talking fast-paced, this isn't quite the cake. My gripe with Command Mission is, while I like the style, the new story, and the new characters, much of the game is pretty sluggish. Some attacks take a while to execute, and encounters really drag on with its animations. Even the cutscenes are a bit on the slow side, with the voice acting sounding very read the script-ish, what with the pausing between the lines. Thankfully, it's not a very long game since each chapter lasts less than 2 hours, but it definitely could have used some snappiness in the animations and transitions. The battles are also a bit clumsy since it falls into the random encounter annoyance category, where you're often taken away from the adventure to fight something every 2 steps. Now this is fun in Battle Network because the encounters are fast and easy to solve and you know where they will usually happen. But here, it's just abruptly in your face. Slow gameplay aside, I can't be too harsh with this game. It did something interesting with the X universe and I do enjoy it for that. It's still charming, unique, and carries a good amount of story-driven weight. Does it measure up to the likes of Battle Network? Hell no, not even close. But if you're marathoning the X series like me and are contemplating what to play in between the last few games, then Command Mission makes for a pretty decent 7th game break.
See, that wasn't so bad now, was it?
Yeah, I guess you're right. Regardless of what you may be, you did set a pretty versatile foundation for what the series can take off from. And admittedly, I appreciate a more lighthearted take on the X series, whether it's ironic or not. At least there's some enjoyment to draw out of the dynamics between the new characters and story.
Ah, that feels good to be appreciated.
So we got a passable spin-off, but what about the rest of the mainline series? Can the games pick themselves back up again after a harsh current? And if they do, is it enough to save the series? Well, I mean, it's the last game in the batch, so I think that answers itself. Mega Man X8 is the X game that really hammers in the "we're done" mantra. Unlike X7, it goes back to its roots of being a 2D side-scroller. But like X7, this is an experimental installment trying something much different than what it's used to and see how well it hits, on top of keeping the 3D designs. The result is a game that people either really love, really hate, or completely in the middle. Me, I'd say I'm somewhere in the third, but lean closer to the first. There's something about what X8 does that I honestly really admire, even though not all of it was praiseworthy. Starting off, we have the newly decorated team of Maverick Hunters, including X, Zero, and Axel. They're out to solve a new Maverick outbreak caused by Sigma, and rescue the director of the Jacob Project, Lumine. What's the Jacob Project? Well, it has something to do with creating a giant elevator to evacuate humanity into the moon. Trust me, that's gonna be important soon enough. Just to get it off the way, the game is good. It reaffirms its core X gameplay and brought back the good features from even some of the lesser beings. The one good feature from X7 makes a return: the play-a-switch mechanic. You can take up to 2 characters with you to venture a stage, between the standard but upgradable X, the swift saber-swinging Zero, and of course, the shape-shifting Axel. In his case, his gameplay is improved so that his rapid-fire attack has its own convenient uses, and his replication abilities feel much better controlled compared to what it was. Zero thankfully plays more swiftly than he was in X7, and X's armor found its footing in being ridiculously fun to use again. So off the bat, they got the basics of the players right. Other features including purchasing items and upgrades are part of the game as well. While some might say this takes away from exploring the game's nook and crannies, I personally don't mind them trying this method once, even if it brings a new issue with the game that we'll get to later. You can select between 3 operators for each mission, and they all offer you specific insights. Alia reads your routes, Layer gives you boss info, and Pellet finds secret items for you. Alternatively, you can just go without an operator, which is preferable, but there are times where you do need their insights if you plan on getting all the items and upgrades. Props to them for at least making the operators feel useful this time. As for all the other stuff, the 3D environment doesn't look too bad for most of the time. The art style definitely seems more polished than what it was in X7, and the music collection are still a total bop. Also, the voice acting is good. Yeah, never thought you'd hear good voice acting in a Mega Man X game, do ya?
Let's enjoy this little reunion, okay?
So far so good. It seems like the game already has refreshing elements to kick it off with, but you may have noticed that I haven't touched the levels and Mavericks yet. Yeah. I appreciate the dramatic amount of effort X8 puts into its production, but not everything it attempts really hits bullseye, especially when the core of gameplay formula is involved. First off, the stages. The game only has 3 standard stages: Bamboo Pandemonium, Gravity Antonian, and Dark Mantis. To their credit, they work pretty well as ride armor, puzzle, and stealth levels respectively, but it's still a minority. All the other stages are super gimmicky, with some of them being a full-fledged vehicle stage, and others doing dumb crap like a fake minigame lab and auto-scrolling. The only one that mostly works is Earthrock Trilobite, where you fight one big mini-boss across the whole thing. Don't get me wrong, I like it when these games try to set each stage apart. But this game suffers the opposite problem of X3, in which the stages are so different that they lost track from the standard gameplay, making them kind of annoying to go through. And then there's the Mavericks. Boy, what am I looking at? Sure, there's a few cool ones like the aforementioned Antonian and Mantis, but almost all the other Mavericks are either too goofy or too bland. Gigabolt Manowar is a total coward, Optic Sunflower sounds like someone's constipated math teacher, Burn Rooster lost all his coolness thanks for residing in such an awful stage. Hell, I had to look up Avalanche Yeti's name before writing this script. Way to be the second most forgettable Maverick in the series. Remember the purchasing system I mentioned? I did say I don't mind it for what it is, but of course, like the average RPG shop system, it brought rise to the accursed ritual of grinding. Yeah, needless to say, you're gonna find yourself going to Bamboo Pandemonium stage and putting your characters on auto shoot while standing on a treadmill for a few hours if you want to get all the game's resources. Granted, you don't have to do it, but in a game like Mega Man X, this really doesn't seem like something that should ever be an option at all. It's this kind of tedium that made me feel like I'd rather stick with the items being hidden within levels rather than being purchased material altogether. Though I will say this, for all the downsides this game had in the middle, it makes up for a lot of it with pretty good endgame content. You chase down Sigma until you reach the moon and have one more battle with him to end it all. But as it turns out, the Chin of Butts himself is finally getting the comeuppance he rightfully deserves, being usurped by another twist villain! Yep, Lumine was controlling Sigma to help with the Jacob project and create a dominating utopia for new generation Reploids. And thus, we get one of the coolest final battles in the series against Lumine's arsenal of copied attacks and transition to Bullet Hell Angel mode, which I'm pretty sure inspired the Radiants to a degree. This concludes the era of the antagonists we came to know. The Jacob project is destroyed and the new generation technology is left behind atop the moon, including Sigma himself, meaning he could never return to Earth and make his annoying comeback again. Yay! After that, we got access to New Game Plus, where we can buy new weapons and armor for the Virtuous Hunter crew and even play as the operators for fancy's sake. They're basically toned down version of the Hunters, but it is fun to take some Femme Fatales out on a stroll when they're not even traditionally equipped for it. And that was Mega Man X8. Is it as great as its Golden Age predecessors? Well, not really, but that doesn't mean it's not fun. It's certainly one of the games that tried the hardest with its style and gimmicks, and while it doesn't always work, it stood up well enough to be its own thing. It sadly didn't do nearly well enough to save the series, but I personally don't mind seeing the saga tie its knot here, rather than continuing to corrode itself with rush installments. If you're looking for a decent game to pick up and play, X8 can fill in the blank totally fine. It may not be the best, but considering what it had to follow up, it's still pretty damn good. So that was the entirety of the Mega Man X series. I have never seen a large and popular series that's so infamous for having a constant shift of quality between installments. It's such a strange experience, but I'm oddly glad that it's the way it is. Mega Man X initially started as a redecoration of the Mega Man formula, and its success carries it far enough to go through a high and low journey. When the games are good, they're practically legendary. When they're bad, we either prefer to not talk about it or find an easy single target to hit. I always loved the Zero, ZX, and Battle Network games because they have a steady value that comes from niche productions. They're games made with a passion to take the series in a completely different direction without falling victim to mainstream capitalization. But that's not to say I can't appreciate what the X series has gone through. It may be clumsy, but like a roller coaster, it's kind of fun that way. Now then, I got a bum to lift, so until next time.